Okay, let's get started. We have not finished lecture 3 yet, so I want to finish that, and then I want to start with lecture 4. And I believe what I ended up leaving off towards the end of last week was around the Porter's 5 forces model. I may have even, actually I think I got a little farther than that. Let me find exactly where I may have left off. Talking about how information technology can be used to give competitive advantages and what type of forces. And in terms of just review, actually, this is probably a good spot just to start with, just so I can overlap the 2 lectures. The 5 forces model helps business people understand the relative attractiveness of an industry and the industry's competitive pressures. It looks at the competitive or driving forces that work against each other in terms of these criteria, which is buying power, supply power, threat of substitute products or services, or competition, I should say, threat of new entrants, and rivalry, whatever, among different competitors. And there's the picture of it, weighing against bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers, and things of that nature, all working kind of like against each other, and how you can actually use technology to, and this is where I stopped, I think I actually stopped at the end of this here, how to use technology in terms of all of these different factors to give yourself some sort of a strategic competitive advantage for the most part. And we went through all of them. I think this is where I probably ended up stopping, looking at the 3 generic strategies. So along with the 5 forces model, he's got 3 generic strategies that are used for any business, any industry, to use IT, information systems, and technology to gain some sort of a benefit. So he's basically looking at strategies for beating the competition. Not like going out with a baseball bat and beating them, although that one might work, but a little less aggressive in terms of normal business practices. The 3 strategies are the overall cost leadership. What is it going to cost to be number 1 in the industry? The only reason we're talking about this is because the only reason you want to be in business is to make money, right? So in order to make money, you got to be a leader, hopefully. If you're not a leader, you might be making some money, but is that going to be really enough to benefit all of your, all of the effort that you have to put into it? The differentiation, how are you going to differentiate yourself from everybody else in the marketplace? And then focusing your business on some direction, some drive for the future. So looking at the overall cost of leadership, offering the same or better products, services at prices less than the competition, well, there's a cost to that. Either you have to invest in or gain some sort of partnership with some suppliers that are going to be able to give you lower costs so that you can provide lower selling prices, or put yourself in a niche market somehow where you've got like maybe a high volume or a low margin situation in terms of like what a grocery store would do. So here's some examples. One of them is Walmart, everyday low prices. Low prices, always available. And they're using actually their trade, their type of business as their means of becoming the leader. In fact, I don't really know if Walmart actually has the lowest prices everywhere. So it's kind of a myth these days. Dell, making, and this is kind of a review of what we talked about last time, making the computer affordable and making it customizable is what Dell specializes in, actually. Hyundai, Kia, reliable, low-cost cars. In fact, I don't think Hyundai is in business anymore. Kia is still around, though, and it's kind of like the old Bic lighter kind of thing, disposable. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. Bic lighter kind of thing was when you could basically come out with a disposable product you use and you throw it away kind of thing. Grocery stores, they can be a leader by basically guaranteeing high volumes so that they can make, a low margin, but they can make the volume sales. So in terms of differentiation, offering products and services that is perceived as being unique in the marketplace. We don't really see very much technology, except for technology products, being used for uniqueness or for differentiation. However, it does apply in terms of services if you're able to provide 4G. Well, everyone is doing that now. Or if you're able to provide a cheap something, or if you're able to differentiate yourself somehow. Hummers, nothing else like a Hummer. Audi and Michelin, their safety. So people, when they think of an Audi They think of Michelin in terms of the tire company, Pernelli, I think performance. So that kind of differentiates things, high-end supermarkets and things like that. Or focusing the business, focusing offering products and services at some sort of niche market, some sort of segment. So to a particular segment or a buyer group within a segment of product line. This is where we get specialized things online, where you can buy a product, you can buy a service, you can get it online through technology, and it's something that, let's say it's a subscription to a service to, retrieve stock prices or something, or it's a business analysis, or it's a program, or it's an application that you're using online. It's kind of like subscription to, like, say, PayPal, as an example, to process your online purchases. Other examples outside of technology would be restaurants, physician offices, legal offices. For a while they used to do this prepaid legal services on the internet. That went away. How often do people actually get sued? It's not like insurance for their car. They don't necessarily, you need insurance for your car, but do you necessarily need prepaid legal services? It's like how people gamble with health insurance, actually. Some people who think they're healthy never buy health insurance until they discover, I could have used it, or something, when something happens. So, alternative business strategy framework. So if we look at the other options, rather than considering Porter's model, and we look at alternatives, we can kind of go from a top line versus a bottom line kind of strategy. And should your strategy focus on reducing costs, which is the bottom line? What's the bottom line? How much is it going to cost me? Kind of thing. Or increasing revenue, which is the top line. How many sales can we make? How much money? If we sold every product in the store and we sold it at the highest price possible, what's our total? What's the top line? What's the level that we're going to reach? So those two strategies are actually kind of different ways of thinking about or planning implementations, IT or information systems. Yes?
We have both actually.
Yeah, you should actually be considering both. Yeah.
Low cost and more.
Yeah. In a perfect world, you would be looking at both. If you're only looking at one, you're going to fall short somehow. The bottom line might be that you're not even making a profit. So they do both play. They're not against each other like the Porter's model where the factors are working against. It's more together, as you pointed out. The other model is the Run, Grow, Transform, the RGT framework. So you run the business, you grow it, you use IT and information systems to transform it into the next level, into kind of like what ITU is doing, actually. We were pretty small a couple of years back when I first started here. We had like maybe 100 students or 200 students. Not too many. Now we have over 1,000 or 2,000. I can't remember what the student body count is. I know it just rose again. We allocate in terms of the percentage of IT dollars on various types of business strategies. You run with it for a while, you grow it, then you transform it. You change it. So we're moving into a new building at the end of this month. We are hiring more faculty people. We're getting better technology. We're upgrading the ITU EMS system and things of that nature. So in terms of that strategy, you run for a while and you basically set a budget. And then you grow the budget as the company grows. So if it's not growing, if it's going the opposite direction, then you cut it. So it allows for more flexibility in terms of the strategy for growth, if you're looking at growth. Here's the top line versus the bottom line kind of picture view. You can kind of see that where we have sales on the top and we have expenses on the bottom, and it kind of puts it into perspective. So the top line, how are you going to reach new customers, offer new products, new services, offer complementary products, grow the product line. The bottom line is optimizing the manufacturing processes. So applying IT to make the product cheaper, not really make the product cheaper, make the expenses that are associated with creating the product less. So it doesn't cost you as much. Why do you want to pay a lot when, it messes up your margin, essentially? Decreased transportation costs, that's actually a big issue right now, especially with the price of gas. As gas goes up, do you really want to ship it across the state? Or is it better to pay $1 extra or a couple bucks extra on it and buy it locally? Because when you add everything up, it's the cost of shipping might outweigh, what it might cost to, especially if you try to renegotiate a price, to get some supply locally, or to even do your manufacturing locally. Reduce cost of human capital. How can you cut down by outsourcing, perhaps? Instead of sending all your people to training, maybe send them out or get rid of them all and contract an outside firm who's already specialized, who's already trained, and let them take that burden of training expenses or something. And errors in the process, minimizing errors in the process. Errors are huge, actually. And the more mistakes you make, the more it adds to your bottom line and your costs go up. I mean, you can't, especially if you're manufacturing, you got like bad product coming off the product line or even defective product. It's going to reduce the bottom line. It's going to increase the bottom line. It's going to reduce the top line, essentially. So you can kind of put those in terms of top line, bottom line, and this is a summary of what was on that chart, actually. And here's some more, just to kind of summarize this, put this to rest. It increased revenue on the top line. So using technology, using information systems, you're going to reach new customers. Well, you're going to do e-commerce, essentially. That's how you're going to do it. You're going to offer new products. You're going to be innovative, hopefully. And it may not even be a new product. It might not even just a service, or an option to do something, or a strategic partnership with another company who provides something complementary to your business. This would be like if you're selling MP3 players. Well, what about someone who sells headphones or battery backups or adapters and pieces, which kind of falls into the cross-selling as well. If you're selling an MP3 player, how come you're not selling all of these cross products that might work with the same product? And then complementary products, why aren't you selling computers if you're selling MP3 players or something? And there's millions of people selling MP3 players, so don't get into that business. There's no money in it. Bottom line, no money. So, all right, bottom line, minimizing those expenses. Optimizing manufacturing, decreasing transportation costs, minimizing the errors in the process. Okay, so let's take a look at this framework, the run, grow, and then transform framework. You're going to allocate the IT dollars appropriately depending upon which stage you're at. You're optimizing the execution of an existing process. So I'll put this into ITU perspective, where we have a building that was big enough at one point. Actually, it started out over here. We started running, and then we moved across the parking lot to that other little building area. So we expanded as needed. We kept expanding. Now it's more expensive to keep acquiring the neighbors, and the structure isn't good. The structure's made for somebody small. When we've expanded, it's great temporarily, but for future growth, it's better to start fresh, scrap it all, start with a brand new building that's bigger. That can accommodate more than what we actually need. It's a huge building, actually. So it's not an IT related, but it's a strategy, and it kind of gives you an example of how to run, grow, and then transform in terms of the model. So you're optimizing as you're running, you're growing, you're increasing market share, hopefully, and you have products and you have service offerings. So we're getting accreditation. So that's actually an attempt to increase market share. Because as we grow, especially in a new facility that can take on 2 or 3 times as many students as we currently have, we can accommodate them, and at the same time, in order to justify or to make that expense worthwhile, you have to grow the student body. So, what probably could go wrong is if we don't get accreditation. Then we'll end up going backwards. We're not going to be growing. We'll be going backwards. But that's seriously, we're looking good in that front. So if you were to put money on it in terms of, and actually in all businesses, it's kind of a gamble anyway. Nobody knows for sure, are they going to like this product? But you've invested millions of dollars in creating it, so you're going to hope. So it's a gamble, it's a risk. However, the risk is looking good. It's not a bad risk. It's in terms of ITU. So, and then you're transforming, so you're becoming innovative and in terms of processes and services and things. So as we grow, we get accreditation, we start adding on doctoral programs, starting adding on more degrees, starting adding on certification programs, and we start increasing the offerings to appeal to a bigger group of students, essentially. And then, unfortunately, well, I should say unfortunately. Yeah, it is unfortunately for you guys. You guys have like a special niche market here. My question I wonder about is if accreditation happens, will we be just like any other university around here in terms of lack of diversity? You know, is the local market going to come in and take over ITU? Where ITU is all international students. So that's kind of good for you guys because you can make friends and you guys all in the same boat and you're all pretty much similar nationalities and regions and things. I have no idea, but I mean, I can assume that you have some sort of liking to being with people of your same kind of background. If you go to another university around here, you're the minority. You're the majority here. But then you end up with like the reverse kind of thing going on. And how does that transform in terms of my example of transformation? It might actually change and transform ITU into a totally different school. I mean, I hope it doesn't. In fact, you know, hopefully what we do have the potential of scooping up other foreign students, especially with the accreditation, and giving ITU even a bigger international student body than it had before. But I often wonder, I also kind of think, what is the future? You know, if I'm going to look into a mirror ball and see ITU 10 years from now with accreditation, are we going to be just like San Jose State? You know, or some of the other schools around here? I kind of wonder about that, actually. But I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see what transforms. Either way, I think ITU will probably always keep its uniqueness in terms of its international student body. I mean, I can't imagine that really changing that much. In fact, what I can kind of sort of envision this little group and then this little group. So the group of local students, the group of international students, and everything's separated out into its own little niche. I can kind of see that happening. With these guys who have their own student government, these guys have their own student government. It's kind of like subcultures all in the same group. But it might be actually an interesting kind of university, which I haven't seen around here. So. But that's an example of transformation. So when you focus on innovation, you can transform to actually create different types of products. And to talk about technology, I'll give you an example in terms of innovation. It would be like a cable company transforming into a long-distance carrier, giving you phone service, which we have, which is what happened. You know, they had the cable service deregulation happened, you know, in 1996. 94 or 96, I can't remember. And then all of a sudden we have utilities companies getting into the long distance and the local loop telephone service business. We have Netflix working with Wii consoles and I can't remember, I think they work with the Xbox, but I'm not sure. But I know they work on the Wii system. And they're also talk about them working, you know, with different other service providers. So you transform and you kind of, cable company turns into, you know, something else. Video rental company turns into something else. You know, so then we have this value chain analysis to kind of look at. Because just because we can transform doesn't necessarily mean we want to, or we should. Going back to ITU, does it make sense to expand past the international market? Or is it best to be the #1 international university around here, which has got its advantages to it as well. So looking at the value chain analysis, a systematic approach for assessing and improving the value of the business processes is just a way of mapping it all out and putting a number value. Like today we're a 10, last month we were a 9 or something. Or if we get accreditation, we'll be 100 or something, you know, right? And whatever scale we come up with. And looking at the value chain is a series of business processes that lead to the bottom. You know, that each one adds value to the organization process, and each one adds up together. So you can kind of assess how you're doing and how you're transforming by looking at the feedback that comes from the value chain analysis and use that as a means of measuring growth. Business processes themselves, a standard set of activities and accomplishments, how to do a specific task, and I kind of went over business processes in the information systems course. 2 types of processes. We have primary and support in terms of those business tasks. And so if we break the processes out into categories, and the popular way is to actually kind of, you know, is it a primary or is it a support process? apply people to the process and then implement what well, actually it's not me, I can't remember who came up with it, refers to as Taylorism, where you take IT, information systems technology, you apply it to standardize a particular task or business process, you break the processes out, you standardize them all, you find the right people to do each one of the tasks, and then you shift the blame or you shift the responsibility from the staff people to the management. And then that gets shifted up and that gets shifted up. So you can actually organize the work, and you can use technology, information systems, to make that happen. And here's the value chain analysis in terms of all the components and how they lead to the margin, the value added approach. So as we're going from support, on the left-hand side we have support value processes and primary value processes, putting a value on those two different categories of processes. And then we have examples of the different processes, categories on the upper and lower part of that arrow. So for support, the firm infrastructure, the network system, telecommunications, human resource management, everything that doesn't lead to the creation of the product, or the primary, everything that leads to the creation of that product, coming through and basically, looking at the added value and the margin that you're getting towards the end. And then you can actually kind of use it to determine, how can we minimize costs, or how can we maximize profits, depending upon what angle we're looking at in terms of how it's working together. So in terms of the primary value process, it takes the raw materials, transforms them, delivers them, markets and sells them. In fact, this slide is a little bit better in that, because you see the inbound, this is the bottom part of the slide, where you see the inbound logistics, operations, marketing, sales, service. That's just a couple, it's just some blanket categories. You can probably add more to it depending upon your business. And you might be in a business that doesn't have any operations management, maybe. You might be working with a total customer-oriented business, and then you'll have customer relationship management or something instead. And then the support value is everything that you need. In fact, you could actually kind of look at this and say these are product assembly expenses versus overhead expenses. If you're an accounting person, you're probably talking about fixed overheads like rent, utilities, cost of the. But if you're looking at this in terms of a strategy model, some of those fixed overhead you don't really have any control over. It's going to cost you for the building, especially if you're stuck in a lease. It's going to cost you for utilities. It's going to cost you for health insurance and stuff like that. But can you play around with, and you can play around with, let's say, what it costs you for your network services and for your IT support. Do you really need to give everybody a computer or a cell phone or, all of these, what they call optional, but they aren't really optional. They're support services or support processes. So you have services, processes, activities, and overall expenses that are associated in this category. In fact, same thing applies to the primary ones. So focusing IT appropriately on both areas is a strategy that a lot of people use. And here's just some general percentages. Human resource management looks like a higher percent, 7.1%, over firm infrastructure, over technology development, procurement, 27% of your overall expenses. And then we have some on the bottom. We have operations, about 40%. So what you could do is kind of map this out and say, well, of these particular areas, our primary concern was going to be in operations, because we have 40% of our allocated expenses are going to that area. And then on the other angle, we're looking at 27% on procurement. So if we're going to use technology dollars to make an improvement, we're going to go for the bottom line. We're going to minimize, essentially, the expenses in that operations category or in that other category. Where a lot of companies go wrong is they kind of pick an insignificant or a low-cost expense area and they try to automate it. And they spend technology dollars where it doesn't really lead to anything. It doesn't improve either the top or the bottom line. And you end up essentially in a situation where you probably were better off if you didn't spend the IT dollars, because the IT dollars are coming out of your capital. So hopefully they should be adding some value somewhere, or making some improvement. And here's the value reducing processes to take a look and say, look, how can we reduce everything? Well, here We've put down operations at 10%. We've increased outbound logistics and marketing and sales. So we've juggled the percentage of dollars spent to reduce the costs and played around with the numbers a little bit. And this is more than just like an accounting thing. This is like, how you're going to operate the business kind of thinking. So that was kind of the overview of Porter's model and expenses and bottom line, top line, and running and growing. The next lecture is lecture number 4, and it's a continuation actually, but it gets into some different topics. And what we're going to do now is kind of look at general areas, focusing on gaining the competitive advantage, which is why we want to look at the strategic management of information technology and how to apply it to different areas of the business operation. And so we're going to look at supply chain management because that's one of the growing areas for IT implementations. And we're also going to look at customer relationship management, CRM, and we're also going to look at defining collaborative tools, collaboration using the internet to kind of bring things together. And this, I would say, is an add-on. I'm not going to go through each one of these. I will briefly describe them, but this is what was covered in the information systems course. In terms of adding the technology to it, that's what kind of the focus of this particular course and this particular lecture in general. So discussing the impact of the IT culture as well on technology choices, on implementations, and then following up with some ERP examples and applying technology towards enterprise resource planning, which is probably the most misunderstood concept in business. Is what in the world is ERP? Most people can understand supply chain management. Most people can probably understand customer relationship management, and even collaborative kind of tools. ERP though, people look at that and go, "What is an ERP system?" It's only because really big companies can afford to use it, and the smaller companies that have actually invested in it, thinking, "Oh yeah, buy this ERP system; it's going to save our company." All of them have gone broke essentially, so it's been a bad choice. So let's start with an example. If you took my data mining class, I talked about Jellyfish. Actually, it's no longer in business. It was bought out by Microsoft. Some of the features became part of the live search tools. In fact, you see some of them actually in Windows 7 and some of the built-in features for searching and finding. What this was essentially is a company that did a different kind of way. It was kind of like the opposite of eBay. On eBay, you kind of bid on things. You auctioned. It was an auction. Well, it is an auction kind of concept. Jellyfish was it got lower, and then you bought it when it reached a low price. It's like the opposite. Instead of the price going up, the price was going down. And it kept track of clicking, and it adjusted how often the price would go down and how things would click, depending upon the demand. So if it was a real low demand, it jumped quickly. And then so people, because you're only going to get 1 or 2 clicks on it. So people would go in and say, "Oh, it's at $12. Oh, for 2 weeks it's been at $12. Oh, it's $11.50. Buy it." It only went down by 50 cents or something. Other things would start up extremely high, and you'd get suckers that would come in and buy it. And then, if you just wait, the only thing is you have limited supply. So they would price things up extremely high. It's the exact opposite of eBay. Price things up extremely high. And then just, if you want it, it's available, you're going to buy it. Well, that caused some inflation. Price inflation. And customers didn't like it. They look at that and went, $299 for a mouse? What? They would not like the price. So they would go away. So the concept in general didn't work out. They'd rather see something for $1 and then put a bid on it. I'll buy it for $1. Because if you think back to Porter's 5 forces model, there's no buying power. It's all selling power, 100%. And what do consumers want? They want buying power. So the concept failed by just the pure concept of it. But some of the algorithms and some of the technology that was implemented was really unique for the time. And then when Microsoft took it over, it used a lot of it actually for some of the search engine techniques and some of the other things they've implemented along the board. So actually, I think I've jumped ahead on the slide, but they closed in 2009, and it was the first website exclusively cost per action for shopping. So it measured clicks, and that's actually kind of, if you think about Google Ads, it kind of works the same way. Every time a customer clicks on something, you owe something. If you're the one who's provided that advertisement, then you're getting something for it. You got somebody to click on it. So, well, we have fake clicks and we have a bunch of other stuff. And the cost per action for shopping also gave revenues to customer by means of rebates on purchases and things of that nature as well. We see that. We see rebates all the time in the real world. And then we have SMEC, which is a group of jellyfish or shopping in terms of what the question's all about. And it's reverse auction format. So sellers post items at a decreasing price, buyers jump in, buy when the price is acceptable, as I pretty much explained with jellyfish. We have other kinds of techniques as well in terms of buying per click. The more you click, the price goes up, the price goes down, which is sort of the concept in terms of auctioning or gambling kind of thing. Then we have social commerce shopping, another kind of way of making e-collaboration really effective. Buyers talk on chat boards. This is kind of like eBay in some way. They have social. You can communicate. You can send a message. Hey, I see your item. Will you ship it, for this amount instead, or will you ship it internationally, or will you? And you can ask questions and go back and forth. You can get a Craigslist. You can communicate via email or the phone. Kind of dangerous because it's not very structured, but still the same concept is you're getting together collaboratively and you're kind of doing social commerce in a lot of different ways. So encourage each other not to buy too early, which is actually what happens. There's games. In fact, you can buy books on reading strategies for how to bid on eBay because if too many people buy too often, it raises the price up. So actually, 90% of the strategies are based on the ending date, ending time. Within the last hours, you're getting the most bidding on something, and there's actually tools that will show you, what's going to expire soon and stuff like that. This is also called social commerce shopping. So Jellyfish had 100,000 people participating in this, actually. Because people would get together and they would say, when do you think the price is going to drop? I don't know. We're all waiting. Let me know when the price drops or something. And they would go back and forth and exchange, communication. If you think of the concept, some questions kind of come to mind as to, is this designed for the consumer? Is it designed for the seller? Or is it not even commerce related? Is it more of a social thing? And does it belong here? Then we have, obviously the cross of this where we take social networking sites and we try to sell products on it, which I don't actually believe in. I mean, if you're going to be on a social network, are you really there for commerce? But people actually buy a lot of stuff from those things. They buy games, they buy all sorts of products and services, and then they have gaming sites where they sell products inside. The Second Life, if you've heard of that, is a social virtual reality game that people, and then you can buy health insurance through social. You could, all of these different services and features and products that you can buy through Second Life, which is kind of interesting. So some questions, do you use a live auction site like eBay? And how does it differ? Purposes of becoming a participant? Well, because you want to buy something. What sorts of products are best suited for a reverse auction format? I'd say cars, actually. Big ticket items. I believe a big ticket item would sell a lot better in a reverse situation because that's what we do when we go out to buy it in real person, in real life. If you've bought a car in the U.S., if you've looked at a price, that's never the selling price. That's the asking price. And then you go in and you get this taken off and that taken off. Basically, you just negotiate to the point where you're accepting the price. And then you buy it. That's a reverse auction. You think about it in concept. But we can't sell our products like that because it's the exact opposite of what we do. If we walked into a grocery store, are we going to negotiate on every single item that we're going to put in our cart? It's going to be way too much work in the long run. So works for different types of products. So big ticket, once in a lifetime, once in a year or two purchases, it works great for reverse. And you can use technology to facilitate that. Okay, so let's take a look at supply chain management in terms of information systems innovations, technology innovations, because this is where we have almost everybody is using some sort of an automated, technology-oriented supply chain management program. If you're doing things the old way, you can't compete. Actually, it just doesn't make sense. Your expenses or your bottom line is way too high. So supply chain management tracks inventory and information among businesses, processes, and cross companies. So if your inventory is not on the computer, forget it. Go out of business today. There's no way. But it goes past the inventory. So keeping track of the inventory, keeping track of where you're getting each one of your items from, and your communication with each one of these vendors can be automated so that if your supply goes down low, they can securely, you can allow them security to log in. They can monitor how well you're selling something. They can monitor your levels. In fact, you can configure the system to bring out a report. Any inventory system these days prints out something or gives out some information by email. It says, hey, you've got, when we get down to 10, let me know. Oh, you're down to 10. It's kind of like how we're managing our checking account. Like, as an example, Chase will let you know when your balance reaches a certain point and certain things come in. You have to do that these days in terms of the supply chain. And so IT systems support the management of supply chain. Just in time, everybody's heard of that method for producing everything. So it just arrives when you need it, whether you're doing manufacturing. In fact, that's not good enough anymore either. Why do we want it to arrive at all anyway? So if you're a Barnes & Noble, you're an Amazon, you don't have any warehouses, you don't have any just-in-time anymore. Instead, you're selling, you're drop shipping, is the old term for it, or you're selling and you're facilitating from the vendor to the customer, and you're the middleman, essentially. Dell uses just-in-time delivery option for customers because they make a product. So, key features of an effective supply chain management would also include the just-in-time through a just-in-time kind of interface. And here we have inventory, the low, the high cost. I don't have to tell you, you guys are all business students. There's a cost to inventory. The longer you keep something in inventory, the more expensive it is. The higher your bottom line, the lower your top line. So, long story short, you don't want to have any inventory. So time is of the essence in terms of inventory management, which is what the just-in-time kind of does for you. And then we have the models. So the supply chain management in terms of most of the supply chain uses what's called an intermodal transportation. We have multiple transportation channels, railway, truck, etc., to move products from one place to another. Because now we have to think about shipping costs. And this is kind of like how you have to decide, you have to actually make some good decisions on how you're going to get those items. And then what is the price of the transportation of those items in terms of a factor. It creates supply chain complexities. Because let's say you have, let's say you're running a grocery store. You're not going to buy all of your items from one vendor. You're going to get them from maybe hundreds of thousands of different vendors. How they ship it to you, if it's $1, $2, when you're buying something online, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you don't even get a choice. Are you going to use FedEx, UPS, U.S. Postal Service, this, that? And what people end up doing is they kind of, in their own personal shopping, they pick something they like. I like priority mail. Actually, personally, I like priority mail because it's cheap. Right? But it's not necessarily cheap for everything. If I'm buying something from someone in California, I'm going to get it faster if I go through U.S. regular old ground mail than if I take my priority mail, which is 3 days. But if it's from Southern California, I'll get it tomorrow. If I just go, and it'll cost me $1 versus $10 to get it shipped. So the supply chain management can consider where are you located in relationship to the company, how fast do you need it, and then schedule it out. So the just-in-time systems these days that are merged with intermodal transportation for supply chain management says, we're going to need this part in 2 weeks. Don't wait until the day before, because it's just-in-time. The theory is shot when you take just-in-time alone and not consider transportation as a factor. Because then if you schedule it, maybe you need to order this a month and a half ahead of time because it has to go by snail boat or whatever, slow boat from China to come in. It's going to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's going to cost you more to order it a week before so you can get your just in time. Because you have all that time. So what this strategy does is it calculates all the time in shipping, figures out the cheapest method to ship something, and it's not necessarily the slowest that's the cheapest. Sometimes you need something, in your scheduling or something. It might be cheaper to send it overnight, especially if it's coming from Southern California. It's going to be not going to cost you as much. So, anyway, and how big the item is and how long you're going to store it for. That's also a consideration. So it creates complexity, so you put it in. So opportunities for new features. So now you're thinking, oh yes, this is pretty standardized. Everybody uses it. Everybody has to use supply chain management. You're right. You have to. Otherwise you can't compete. There's no such thing as the mama papa store anymore where they don't use computers and for inventory. Unless you're selling one product and you're making it yourself, you need to use this stuff. So opportunities in terms of the business strategy is the overall cost leadership. This is where you can come and play games. Because right now everything's pretty much competitive. In the old days, people, I'll just find a better supplier. Everybody's having everything made in China. Everything is made at the cheapest price. Everything's imported. Everything's coming from the same source. Everything's OEM in terms of electronics these days. You can't work with your relationships with obtaining the best price. You're going to get this, everyone's going to get the same price. So the overall strategy can be optimized by looking at your supply chain management system, applying technology to make improvements and make it more efficient, add more features to it, so you have a strategy going on in terms of how you're receiving stuff. Looking at the bottom line initiatives, essentially, is what I talked about in the last lecture, and running the organization framework, the run, the grow, the transform. So sometimes actually it's a matter of companies growing too fast. They're running, but they're growing faster than they're running, which is what a lot of high-tech startups do. They have 5 people, but they have a huge warehouse and a huge building already. It's like, why do you need that? I always like it when, you can tell how successful a business person, an entrepreneur is going to be. Is how quickly do they get business cards made? Some of them actually have business cards before they're actually in business. You see that? That's a red flag. Okay, so you think being in business is renting a building and getting business cards printed. When their focus isn't necessarily on the business strategy, it's on looking like they're a business, or they want to be a business. So common issue. So the goal is to squeeze out every penny of cost possible in the supply chain. Minimize expenses completely. And this doesn't mean going out and buying a huge server system and installing a license that's going to cost you, $10,000 or something like that for new software for a supply chain management system. A lot of this stuff can be done manually in the beginning. And then you can get someone to build it actually for you. Because if you use a off-the-shelf supply chain management program, you're not really giving yourself a competitive advantage. It's kind of like you're doing everything the same way everybody else does something, which doesn't work. Which is one of those major scams you get with, you ever seen those magazines I have them at Fry's and stuff, those entrepreneur magazines, does it go into business for yourself? And you open it up, say, look, a vending machine business, oh look, a website business, oh look. They're pre-packaged programs that someone has thought of that put it together. And it's kind of like buying a pre-packaged supply chain management system. You don't have any advantage. In fact, the only one who's making money is the one who's selling you the supply chain management program. Because as a business, you're running everything like hundreds of other people who bought the same program, who are doing the same thing. If you count out all your hours of labor, you're probably better off being unemployed or working a job or something in terms of what it is that you're actually getting. So don't fall for those scams in the magazines, essentially. They're not gonna bring you big, huge profits. So optimize fulfillment, logistics, production, revenue, profits, and cost and price. Even, I wouldn't discuss this in a technology course, but pricing strategies actually can raise the top line because depending upon what you're selling something at, this is kind of like Apple's motivation. they have a pretty strict, in fact, if you watch how their products are introduced, their supply chain for their product development life cycle, you can kind of see how their pricing strategy kind of works. And people are willing to pay to be the first one on the block, to have, a thin notebook or something, or to have something from Apple. Okay, so IT, information technology support for the supply chain management, systems pioneered to specialized. Actually, what ends up happening is companies come up with their own system here, as I mentioned before, their own unique pattern. And it's usually something that's going to be proprietary to them, because that's what's going to give them the competitive strategy in terms of lowering the bottom line. Now part of most ERP systems, as I'm going to discuss later, because now we've taken supply chain and merged it with some of the other functions to even automate it further. So most people who run a retail store know, you want to have your inventory with your sales engine combined. So you don't have automated inventory right there. Once you sell something, it's deducted from the inventory parts list, blah, blah, blah. And you can actually track your margins, and you can actually track, because your cost that's in the inventory system, the price you sold it at. At a click of a button, you can see how well you're doing. So that's not good enough, though, if you're running a manufacturing firm and you're doing not only inventory and supply chain, you're doing sales, hopefully, but you're also doing distribution. Maybe you have different channels, and then you have resource planning, and you have all those other things out there. So now supply chain management is actually part of most of the ERP systems, because what you don't want is a application for this, an application for this, you want it all together. And this is what complicates things. In terms of learning more, supply chain knowledge management, supply chain management review, these are all kind of different resources to get more information on supply chain management in terms of the concept, what it's working towards. And if you're not familiar with the term, I covered it a lot actually in the information systems class. It's not a bad idea to go look it up, because you guys are MBA students, so you should know what supply chain management is. So. If you don't, that's a red flag. Go look it up. And then go back and review the lecture, and you'll say, oh, that's it. Apply technology to that feature, to that thing. It's more than just inventory control. It's more than just pricing, or more than just controlling the buying and selling. So, customer relationship management. So, as I mentioned before, supply chain management is kind of like where everybody's focused in everything right now. It used to be customer relationship management. This is the old topic. This is the old area that information systems innovations used to work with. This is when we had those automated, you get the call, hi, this is so-and-so from the Republican campaign of the blah, 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 and it's a recording. It's not even a real person. Or you get like the car people selling you the warranties, the service contracts, the upsell, cross-sell, products that go with your product that you bought. And it's all about the relationship with the customer, and it was overdone, overplayed, and abused in a lot of ways. So a lot of people are actually kind of gearing away towards this. It's still around, and it's still a huge focus, and there's still a lot of innovation in it, and you can apply technology towards it. Using technology about customers to gain insight on their needs, wants, behaviors. The growing level of technology use in this area now is for new product introduction. What do the customers want? What features do they actually like? This is what Apple does. It takes feedback and actually uses it to redesign something. People want something that's lighter. They want the keyboard to be bigger. They want the screen to be this. And they start figuring out how to improve the product, and they'll learn. Unless you've been in business for a while, you're not going to be doing this. Most startups can't look at this yet. They can probably focus on supply chain, but they can't focus on customer relations. They have no customers yet. So, requires customers, first of all. Includes multi-channel service delivery. So, once you know your customers, yes?
But if I start a new business, I can look at the competitors' products and try to make a superior product.
But you're basing it off of an old business.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
Apple has been in the business, so just not up like something makes a superior product to iPhone.
Yeah, if you take an existing product and you look at the customer relationship management, and apply some concepts towards those customers from that existing product, then you can use that information to create new products. But it requires customers. It requires a market. Which is why a lot of startups, as soon as they put in a customer relationship management program, they have no customers. It's like, okay, what are you doing? That's another, it's like printing business cards out before you have a business. It's kind of, work on your supply chain management is my point, and worry about your customers once you have them. Hopefully you'll get them. If you have them, then you want to work on the interaction between them. So once you figure out who your customers are, and believe it or not, they may not be who you think they are, which is interesting. Because you can look at census data, you can look at all this external information that tells you that the average age of, it used to be, this is about 20 years ago, the average age of and gender of the person who was on the internet was 50 or above, and they were all male. This was like 70% of all internet users. If you were to do that today, it's going to be totally different. It's probably going to be more 50-50. And there's going to be a huge group between 19 and 25 on the internet, which never existed because these kids didn't have things that were on the internet. But now the big focus is, how are they getting to the internet? Are they getting it through their television? Are they getting it through their mobile device, their smartphone, or is it through another, like a tablet? The tablet market. In fact, this is an interesting thing that kind of surprises me, is why do we have so much tablet stuff out there? Because, Samsung's got a tablet. Now there's a new tablet that works with a keyboard. It's a computer, but it's also a tablet. All these competitions against the iPad. And you have to think, there must be a market for it. There must be someone thinking that, I can kind of see the tablet market. The only problem is tablets aren't doing anything. They're doing email and they're doing internet browsing. So I'm kind of thinking there's probably something else those tablets can be used for, perhaps in the future. And the current kind of innovative kind of step that most companies are taking is, well, let's merge it with a computer. Let's make the tablet insert, and then all of a sudden it becomes the hard drive for your computer, so you're carrying your stuff around. In fact, there's a brand new phone on the market that's doing this. It's a HTC phone that's doing it. It's an Android-based that syncs, and you pull it out, and there's your 60 gig hard drive. You're taking it with you, so you don't have to leave it behind. And that's like a security / make my information available kind of thing, which I can kind of see. But I don't understand why there's so many tablets out there, because the tablet concept didn't fly too well. In fact, Apple's got an excessive amount of iPads that they can't get rid of. What good is it, seriously, when your phone has a big enough screen where you can surf the internet, you can do everything you can do on your phone? Why carry a big old tablet around with you? So some of those decisions come out of CRM because we're taking in, we want to know what customers want. And we want to know how to get at the customers. So just because you can put it on the internet doesn't necessarily mean you should put it on the internet. Sometimes it should be a phone application, a tablet, And then some of these applications, the applets that are being written, you got to wonder what they were thinking. Why do I want to read a novel from a glary screen? I can kind of see the Nook, and I can kind of see the Kindle. I can't see a tablet being used as the same kind of thing. Or even Sony comes out with a good one. But they spend a lot of money on the screen. They make it anti-glare. And there's no email, there's no web browsing, it's just buttons. So you use it to read a book, and it's designed to read a book. The concept doesn't fly too well with a tablet. But I think a lot of people put those tablets out thinking, oh yeah, I can read books on it. It's like, okay. But actually the Kindle is nice because you can actually write on it. You can take a highlighter and you can highlight things and you can underline in the book. And it saves it for you. Can't do that. Actually, there's a couple of apps you can do it if you spend the money for it. But by the time you buy the apps, download the books, it's cheaper just to buy a Kindle, whatever you call it. So, all right. So that's just another kind of a tangent and a sort of another example about how to read the information. So, what you want to include is multi-channel service delivery, hopefully. So and this is actually kind of an interesting thing. Is I'm waiting to see who's going to be the first GPS person. Because every car's got a GPS console in it now. Well, higher end cars. and you have the Grumman, you know, and then you had the HTC phone that can be a GPS system. But I'm waiting for, like, how come I don't get email notifications on my GPS system? How come I can't watch TV on the GPS system? Not a good idea to put a TV in front of the driver. But you see TV screens in cars all the time, so, you know, anyway, as a product concept, not a bad idea. What about video conferencing? Well, now we're going to see 4G. So now we're going to actually start seeing, and this is what I think those tablets are going to be good for, video conferencing. So you can see streaming video while you're talking to the person, but not every one of those tablets has a phone, has a camera on it. So, and the voice over IP technology is not quite that good, and video over IP isn't that good either in terms of the bandwidth. So, all right. So focusing on Salesforce automation, customer service and support, marketing campaigns, management and analysis, all kind of different areas and subcategories. All the things I've been talking about is customer relationship management. If you think about it, it's finding out what the customer wants, developing products that meet the needs of the customer, and it's all about cross segments, cross product, and getting at the same customer in different markets. Because just because you sell computers doesn't mean you can't sell internet products. You can't do TV products or telephone products or something. And here's kind of the way it works. We have email, phone, fax, the web, personal interaction. We have Salesforce automation, customer service and support, marketing campaigns, and it's kind of CRM is kind of written in the middle. It's kind of like a combination of all of those different. It's supposed to be a circle on your slide that looks like an oval. It's a circle. Doesn't really matter. But, all right, let me talk about Salesforce automation a little bit, and because I can probably get through customer relationship management. I believe what might be a good stopping point after this lecture. But okay, so Salesforce automation. We see Salesforce.com. You know. All right, so these are automated tools to collaborate different salespeople. It may also be a way of getting different sales leads. This is not buying and selling people's personal information on the internet, which a lot of people kind of think Salesforce automation is all about buying leads, buying people's internet. And there's a bunch of applications out there that actually allow you to do this, and they call themselves Salesforce automation. You can buy when you call these people up, where'd you get my number from? You know, why are you calling me? You know, it's not a good, viable option anymore. Neither is junk mail or spam mail. Doesn't work, but automating and tracking all the steps in the sales process. So you can actually design your sales team, the efforts, customize what they're doing, design the approach that they're taking so that it's not a forced sale. Hopefully, you're not actually trying to talk somebody into something. You're finding the right customer who wants to buy your product. You're providing him with a happy, friendly interface. And this is kind of like what Honda tried to do because for a while, especially in the car market, a while back, about 10 years ago, people did not want to go into dealerships anymore. Because as soon as they set foot into one just to look at the car, all of a sudden they got approached by 15 different salespeople who were just nagging them to buy a car. So Honda said, no problem, no haggle. We just put a price sticker on it. That's it. If you want to come in, buy a car, no problem. It's like help yourself. No more salespeople haggling you. And actually, the computer industry has kind of gone the same route now. Now customers, it's like push and pull. Instead of pulling you in or pushing something at you, we're just stopping. Consumers already know if you want to buy a tablet, you can go out and find it. Instead, what we're doing is feeding you information. So salespeople can actually market to you without actually selling to you. So they can send you a brochure, put a little ad on a website that just shows a picture, or better yet, give you a logo, give you a symbol, something, like when you're watching a baseball game or something. Or these are all traditional kind of marketing techniques, but now marketing is selling because consumers know how to find you. You're everywhere. You're supposed to be everywhere. If you're not everywhere and they can't find you, you're not doing a good job as a business. You have your business cards and everything, but you can't be found anywhere. Because now it's the opposite. If they can't find you, you don't exist. So if they can already find you, they can buy anything from you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All they have to do is find you. What you're doing is you're making yourself available and you're making yourself known. So instead of Salesforce automation being attack of the customer, instead of it's let's help you. So that's when we had retail stores. This is about 10 years ago. Retail stores, hello. You walk in the door and somebody said hello to me. When you left the store, have a good day, bye. They're trying to be friendly. They're trying to be helpful. So now companies, when you buy a product, there'll be something in there about all of the other products to educate you about what you can buy. So if you're selling an accessory, so here's what you do. You're selling an accessory to, what was his example? I don't know, like anything, like an MP3 player. You're a headphone manufacturer. You're selling these nice little headphones, right? So you're going to put a picture somewhere near or you're going to advertise, but you're not advertising a price. You're not advertising, buy it now, no pressure. It's just letting the customer know that you make these high fidelity, whatever, headphones. And so using technology to feed the information to the customer in a non-threatening kind of way is pretty much the strategy with Salesforce automation. So sales lead tracking, figuring out where you should be sending your information, listing potential customers, market and customer analysis, product configuration, and in getting repeat customers. So usually if you give them something they like, you can sell them to here's another one in a different color. Here's another one. This is what Apple did. When you buy an iPod, most people just don't own one iPod. They have like 3 or 4 of them. Because every year something new comes out. And they want the newest, they want the latest, the greatest, because of the whole image of the iPod and the whole image of the product. So that's actually part of the Salesforce automation. It's selling to the customer essentially, without using traditional Salesforce. I should say forceful sales techniques, like buying information, personal information on someone and then harassing them on the phone until they buy something from you. Here's general management's, GM's Salesforce automation. It's called a purchase funnel. And what you're looking at is making the customer aware. So we've got the purchase funnel on one end and then the ownership phase on the other end. Because just because they bought something from you, they decided, they've bought in. They're part of your company now. They're an asset, actually. So you hold on to them, which is the old traditional method. You retain the customers, and then you upsell, cross-sell, side-sell, and sell them again, which is how you get like customer loyalty programs, trade this in, trade that in. It's actually something that Apple does as well. If you have an old computer, they'll buy it back from you, because they want to refurbish it, sell it to somebody else. If you don't want it anymore, they'll take it back from you. But it's kind of like what car companies do. They won't give you what it's worth. So on the purchase funnel, we got to make them aware, consider, shop for it, buy it. So the buying is not happening at the front stage. The awareness is happening, and the technology is happening over here. Technology is happening on the awareness. If you're not aware, this is how like products that aren't even products back in the Silicon Valley burst, where vaporware was for sale. Products were being advertised. They didn't even exist. Some of them never actually came into existence, but people were aware of them. There was a bunch of weird products on the market back then. And then there's that consideration. Well, sometimes it's testimonial through social networking. Sometimes it's, so-and-so is using this product now. So-and-so is using the iPad to do this. So, so-and-so is using the iPad to do that. Celebrities, but online, through social networking, come on, connect to the something or other. It's like what Uverse, connect and schedule your TV on your iPad. Well, that means you have to go buy an iPad, right? So, in the old days, if you mentioned iPad in a movie, you'd have to pay Apple would have to pay you something for it. Same thing, actually. So the mention of a product, the use of a product, but not just on television and in the movies, but on the internet, which is the IT forces there. The shopping is a no-brainer. That shopping, customers should not have a problem finding you and buying your products, and the buying is a no-brainer. From the ownership phase, Once they've bought it, it's not over with, obviously. Owners of 1 to 6 months, you have the post-sales, the discounts. So because you bought something from our company, we're going to give you 20% off, 10% off. This is where you get the junk mail. And most people actually fall for it because there's an expiration. This is only going to happen, and then consumers are pretty familiar with this at this point. If you buy something, you give them your information, you register the product, you're going to get hound for 3 to 6 months. And then after that, they're not going to talk to you ever again. Because if you haven't fallen for it within 3 days, and what you're going to get is 5% off, 10%. The later it gets, the bigger the discounts. So hold on to your 10% till it expires, because right before it expires, your 20% is going to come out, and then your 30%, and then you're going to get cut off. Because that's like the window of opportunity to get you back in again. And then we have 6 months to, any number of years to hold on to, and then, owners of last 6 months or so, and then you have the re-entry into the market. Eventually, you're going to turn into a brand new customer again. So this is kind of the life cycle of the customer in terms of the customer relationship management strategy. So opportunities. And again, not every company is doing the same thing, although as a consumer, I can tell you I've seen the same stuff over and over again. It's just a matter of time before everybody else catches on and does the same thing. In terms of business strategy, differentiating and focus is where you've got opportunities to apply technology to make yourself a little bit different. Top line initiatives, gaining more customers. This is not really a bottom line. So supply chain management works with the bottom line, and customer relationship management works with the top line. So in a very competitive market, it's the bottom line people are mostly concerned with. When times are good and there's no competition, it's the top line that people are concerned with. It's kind of like the opposite. So it's growing the organization. And you don't usually, in a downturn, you don't normally grow the organization. You try to keep it, or you try to make it smaller and reduce it. So that's why it's kind of the opposite. The classic goals, to treat the customer better, that's still relevant. Understanding their needs and wants, relevant. Tailoring the offerings, relevant. Providing delightful experiences, relevant. Although we have had a problem in recent years with what I would consider customer service, or the lack of customer service. We're actually going the opposite direction. The trend is to provide better customer service, because people are willing to pay more for quality service than to save a few bucks. So it depends again on the customer. It depends on the economy and how bad things are as to where you're going to focus your dollars and your energies. So IT support for customer relationship management, front office systems and back office systems. We've all been victimized of the telephone answering machines. Hello, thank you for calling such and such company. Press 1 for this, 1 for that, and press 2 for this, 2 for that. All right, so taking all that stuff away and putting a live person, as I mentioned before, the trend is to go backwards. Bring back the customer service, get rid of the technology. That's where a lot of the technology ruined customer relationship management. But primary interfaces to customers and sales channels. This is creating new channels. So this is the button that says live support that actually works. In fact, ITU has it too. In fact, I've clicked on it and I've gotten on somebody to IM back and forth live support. So that's good. So if you have a live button, make sure you've got somebody there to answer it. Back office support, fulfilling the fulfillment and support of customer orders, making sure the order is correct. Well, you can use technology to do that and have order tracking. So you can go online. In fact, I'm surprised because the technology exists. Anytime you buy something and you get it shipped, every shipping carrier has a tracking number, has something automated. Only a few companies will send you an email confirmation with a direct link that you can go check on it. It doesn't cost them anything to do that. But I'm constantly irritated when I have to go find out. I have to go back onto their website to find out when it's going to arrive. When it's just a small little piece of information that they can include in a confirmation email. Here's your tracking number. Then the company's actually sending it out when they said they sent it out. But sometimes they just hold them up in a queue and then they get sent out. But they can't give you a tracking number immediately. But features like that improve the customer's experience through technology. Makes it so that I'm more apt to purchase from a company that will give me a tracking number like that. instantly. Both interfaces, databases, analysis, reporting systems can help the company figure out, what percentage. If you had a good experience, even with an online purchase, you got a confirmation number, the product arrived when it said it was supposed to arrive, you're more apt to actually go back and buy another thing from this company. In fact, the entire ability to save in effect, if you shop on eBay at all, to save companies, because when you want to go back to buy something else, I had a good experience with that company. And actually, in terms of customer relationship management, eBay is really good at this because they have feedback. You can rate your experience, and you only want to buy from sellers who have all stars or whatever, have green star or whatever. I don't know what the starting system is all about, but and you can read their feedback and stuff. So that tells you that they're basically focused on customer relationship, which they have to be in terms of that. So here we have customers on one side, sales channels, and more customers on the other side. We have front office and back office systems that work together with a CRM database. The database is acquiring information from internal and external sources and using it as a means for analysis and reports so that knowledge workers can come back and say, how are we doing? How well is our customer satisfaction? If you can't do that, your customer relationship management efforts are wasted because you can't tell if you've actually improved. So there's a lot of systems that think, there's a lot of companies that think that they're doing something because they send a thank you confirmation email out, but they have no way of telling whether that's even effective. So the biggest trend now is using technology to see if it's effective, and it's not sending out a survey. People don't want to do surveys. It's getting the information in an automatic way and using automation for it. So just like supply chain management, CRM is also being pioneered by specialized companies who are coming up with programs that you can buy off-the-shelf CRM systems. Better, same thing with supply chain management, better if the company actually does it themselves, puts it together themselves, because then they have something that's customized to their needs. And just like it's becoming part of enterprise resource planning as well. So you're probably wondering, I don't know anything about enterprise resource. That's the next topic, but I think, well, let's see. We could talk about e-collaboration. Yeah, let's talk about e-collaboration because I think that'll take us to enterprise resource planning, knowledge management, e-tools. Actually, I can get through enterprise resource planning in about 15 minutes or less because you guys know about this already because you guys use the internet, hopefully. You guys use e-collaboration. So another set of tools that ends up going on, e-collaboration, use of technology to support working activities in groups, remote telecommuting companies, employees that don't actually reside on the local company site, integration of collaborative environments, knowledge management systems, social networking. So when you go on to Facebook, you're e-collaborating, actually. Now they have phones. Now that's the part that, there's a new commercial out, the phone. The guy gets in his car after a first date or something like that, and he goes on and checks the status of the girl he went out with or something like that on the Facebook update. I'm thinking, why in the world do you need to go announce to the world every time you've gone to the bathroom, or every time you've gone on a first date or something? Why do you need to make that public to the entire world? I don't understand. Who really cares about that? You do, but do you think? I mean, the whole concept has kind of changed social behavior in general. It's almost like, well, if you can't announce it to the world, is it not worth experiencing or something? Well, it's just kind of weird. It's kind of weird phenomena that's occurring. It's changing cultural habits or expectations. Now, going back to that commercial, the guy probably, before he even went on that day, he probably cyber-stalked the person he was going out with. Probably went online and found every piece of dirt he possibly could come up with to figure out whether he should actually even go out with that girl. Which is kind of sad as well, but happens. So what we're looking at is interactive, integrated, collaborative environments where we're sharing information and we're doing it for profit, could be, for social reasons, for whatever happens to be the goal of the company. We can actually use technology to have virtual teams. So this is when you don't actually have to hire people. You can get them to volunteer, and collaboratively get together without having to pay their travel expenses online. So you have virtual teams and virtual groups that troubleshoot problems, brainstorm issues using technology. So it hasn't really happened yet in businesses. It's mostly a social thing. But the whole e-collaborative concept has really good future capabilities that haven't been, in my opinion, haven't been explored to the nth ability yet. Because we're still having people go to work in offices. So, I mean, collaborative learning, that was new, with e-learning, online classes, online schools. And there's a lot of controversy with that. Is that equivalent to traditional education? There's a lot of issues with that. Well, people have the same problem with working in virtual teams. Just because you have an online job, do you have a real job? And in fact, in a lot of cases, online students study harder and do more work than those who show up. And people that work from home end up working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, instead of being, going to the office and then coming home and being awful for work. So, there's a lot of problems with that. Workflow systems, automation for business processes, processing tasks, even processing a loan in a bank, sales order processing, all of it being done virtually rather than having it happen online. Document management systems, the way resumes are processed these days. It's kind of amazing. A company can take in thousands and thousands and thousands of resumes and actually process them all while they scan them into a computer, and then they click on a few keywords, looking for a typist. I don't know, looking for a programmer. And then pops out 5. Give me 5 of them. And you get the top 5 with the most matches or whatever keywords. So the whole game changes at that point. And what we're looking at is knowledge management systems. So we can use knowledge management systems to automate what happens and to actually create new products, new services, figure out what we're doing. So IT support for capturing, organizing, and disseminating the information. So we have knowledge of facts, sources of information, suppliers, customers, solutions, patents, trademarks, best practices, processes. So the more information gets out, the more we can use it. And then IT, in terms of information systems and strategic advantages, tells you, well, use it. Use the information somehow. The only problem is we don't know how to use it. So we figured out how to use the information. In fact, a lot of the Google stuff is pretty innovative, and I think a lot of people are planning products already. Like, you're in a particular neighborhood, and the system knows that you like sushi. So this will pop up a little message on your phone. Hey, brand new sushi place just opened up within 2 blocks of where you're standing. Here, click now and get 20% off your first meal. Okay, then you can go to this new sushi bar or whatever that opened up. Social networking sites, selling you products and services, posting information about yourself. People actually, we don't have to ask for it. People are just voluntarily giving out tons of information about themselves, which is great, because if you're a business person, this is your best, this is not a nightmare, this is like your best fantasy, because now your customers are telling you everything. So you can now bring new products and services. We don't have to understand them anymore. They're telling us. We don't have to look for it. So we can pull them in by their likes and dislikes and what it is they want. So photos, pictures, all of this information that's being populated. So now we have this whole concept of data mining. And data mining, the whole goal of that is to use all of that information and create a knowledge-based systems to better profit somehow. Create a strategic advantage for the company using that freely available information that people have given out. And now what's actually ended up happening is people are trying to take pictures down, remove information, and they're discovering, we can't do that. Once it's out there, it's out there. So what you can do, though, is prevent putting it out there if you're concerned with that. But there is no security in that information, even if you think there is. So social networking systems links people together. More business focus can be obtained from that. And I think I'll actually end at this, because this is a good stopping point, because you guys are looking a little tired. All right, so e-learning tools, we know about those already. Anyway, so facilitates online learning systems. Actually, believe it or not, you can do this in a company environment as well, and this saves a lot of money. Let's say you're a big university, and you have to have fire training certification. So you're going to take all of your faculty out and send them to a class. Or you're going to send them to a website, they complete a survey, they read some stuff, they take a little test, and then they're certified. So for a lot of government compliance, even like for people, you get a traffic ticket, you have to go to DMV or driving school, instead of actually, you can do it online. So now you can get certificates online, compliance online. So companies are doing this for company training, certifications, anything that's necessary for compliance reasons. It's cheaper, more affordable to do it online. So it's not a bad idea. In fact, this works at the bottom line because it cuts out some expenses that are associated with it. And even for you have to get a transcript. So why should the school actually have you come in? A lot of systems actually have these automated systems that you fill out the form, you sign it, you fax it in. Or you order electronically, sends you an email, you have to confirm it or something. So registrations and things like that nature can be done in an automated way as well. So, all right, so I think next time I'll start out with, keep notes so I can remember. So this is slide number 26, lecture number 4. I'll start out again with the informal collaboration and kind of build through collaboration. It's a little bit longer than that because it kind of builds into the IT culture as well. Talk about the structure a little bit and wind up with philosophical approaches in terms of that. And then talk about enterprise resource planning as a concept. So that's not, I shouldn't say it's a hard concept. It's just kind of like one of those things if you were to describe enterprise resource planning in a sentence or two, kind of hard to get everything out. It takes a little bit of imagination to actually kind of conceptualize what it entails. But so we should be able to finish that next time and then start in with another new topic. So sign the roster if you just came in late. Okay, good. And I will see you next week.